Alright, this is the third video in a series on key terms of the theory of prophylicity. Please allow me to introduce your general peer. Have some sympathy. The theory of prophylicity is a theory of identity technologies, of how we build a sense of self. The age of authenticity often framed identity as something individual, a unique self every person needs to find or create. But from a theoretical perspective, that's a misleading idea. Identity is in practice relational. It happens between people, even in authenticity actually. Here's a true story. Some time ago in Shanghai, I had a small talk with a grad student I happened to sit next to at a conference dinner. I asked him how the semester had been. He said, "Not very good." I said, "Oh, sorry to hear that. What went wrong?" He explained, "My roommate was sick. I was alone in my dorm room most of the time." At Chinese universities, including here at the University of Macau, dorm rooms are normally shared. And most local students don't mind. But when I was a student in China, a big priority for me, as for many other foreign students, was to try and get a single room. In China, as in many other places, the heritage of sincerity is still strong. In sincerity, you build a sense of self by committing to the roles you have in relations with others. In sincerity societies, people were rarely alone. At work, at home, in the bedroom, other people were physically present. And not just other people, but people you knew well. And even if you met someone whom you didn't know, you'd be in a role relationship with them right away, determined by age and gender. You might address the other as younger sister or uncle to establish mutual roles. When no one else was present for an extended period of time, that was experienced not just as unusual, but often also as unpleasant. You could feel lonely and lost. You had no role to commit to. And that might appear on an existential level as a loss of identity. Without a present peer, your sense of self could crumble. In authenticity, things changed. Privacy became a major value, almost a human right. People desired their own space. Traditional role relationships began to look forced. You had to rebel against them to be truly authentic. The ideal of relations was reoriented to individual consent. You didn't just want any roommate assigned to you by the authorities. Agency and so forth. Philosophically, this was called intersubjectivity. Existentially, people wanted not just role mates, but searched for a soulmate. Two authentic individuals mutually recognizing their originality, validating their unique identities, and somewhat paradoxically, mutually confirming their independence. But in modernity, people had to deal not only with role mates and soulmates, but also with a new kind of peculiar and yet more and more significant other, the general peer. According to Niklas Luhmann, modernity is characterized by the rise of functional differentiation, different social systems, in which almost everyone has to participate. Core examples are the mass media, the economy, and politics. Here, you meet the general peer. The first modern mass media were printed newspapers and books. They were written for a mass audience the writers did not know personally and had no role relationships with. With the rise of industrialization, goods were mass-produced and mass-marketed to an anonymous mass of consumers. In liberal politics, politicians appealed to a mass electorate. In China, a one-party state, the ruling party is a mass party too. It has about 100 million members. The general in general peer is an allusion to the notion of the general will of the times of the French Revolution. Like the general will, the general peer is by definition trans-individual. It doesn't correspond to any particular person. And yet, it functions as the focal point of attention and concern. It's the ultimate judge, the voice you speak to, and that responds. The peer in general peer points out that there is not one common Öffentlichkeit or public sphere, not one alien big other, not one amorphous das Man or the they in modern society. Instead, there are many definite, distinct and dynamic peer systems. Paul D'Ambrosio and I coined the term thinking of the academic peer review system. In this system, you don't interact with people you personally know and who are present. But you also don't address just anyone. You address academics in your special field. And the interaction has a very specific format and platform that outsiders often can't understand. It's a sort of bubble. Although the peers don't know one another, and although the bubble can be super large, peers do belong. Everyone's an insider somehow and must follow the rules of the game. The rules, however, are neither sincere nor authentic. As an academic peer reviewer, you're not supposed to expect reciprocity, unlike in sincerity. And you should ignore any considerations of gender or age. You're also not expected, unlike in authenticity, to reveal your innermost feelings to your colleagues. Instead, you're expected to contribute to the verdict of the peer group that you belong to. That's basically the same attitude you're expected to have as a voter in politics, as a customer on the market, or, for that matter, as a viewer of this video. In any identity technology, we become who we are through relations that reflect our identity back to us. In Prophilicity, we enter into social validation feedback loops with our scrollmates. Since profiles, unlike roles, are not interpersonal, second-order observation comes into play. As discussed in the previous video in this series, in the academic industry, in the economy, in politics, or in the media, you are seen as being seen. Dasein is dastehen. Being there is standing there. The point here is not how you are seen by any individual, and much less by any individual you know personally. They count the least, but by the general peer. As in Keen's beauty contest, when dealing with a general peer, it's not about interpersonal skills. Instead, we need to devote our intelligences to anticipating what average opinion expects the average opinion to be. This is a crucial identity-building skill that differentiates Prophilicity from both sincerity and authenticity. If you live in modern society, you must cultivate this intelligence. A sincere and authentic identity is not good enough. Everyone also needs to get along with the general peer. And if you say you don't, then that's bad faith. The mauvaise foi, that's Sartre's term, of the 21st century. The theory of Prophilicity claims that the new media did not create Prophilicity, but that they are used in the way they are for the sake of Prophilicity. The new media and the algorithmic procedures they rely on is the space where the general peer takes shape. Since by definition the general peer has no physical presence, it needs virtual presence. Today, the general peer lives in the new media, and the algorithms are his lifeblood. The experiences existential philosophers described, from anxiety to ecstasy, from guilt to pride, are nowadays experienced with the general peer. Today, people increasingly interact with one another on the street, as well as in the bedroom, I guess, as if in the presence of the general peer. Conversely, what makes us feel lonely and forlorn today is not the absence of a roommate in the dorm, but the absence of a smartphone when we wake up. When the general peer is not there, someone important is missing.